and they're just like, why are you reading it? But I'm reading it because I know people are reading it. I know people like me who are trying to go to that next level are reading it, and they're getting hit with this kind of jibber jabber, word salad nonsense. Hey there, welcome. My name is Dee Dee, and today I am asking the question, truth or danger? The Spiritual Guru Edition. Are these books, these self-help books with a spiritual foundation, more truth or more danger? But before we get into it, I would ask you, what do Harvey Weinstein and John of God have in common? Beyond a rap sheet that would make any mob boss blush, they have an endorsement by the one, the only, the incomparable, Oprah Winfrey. And I'm not saying this to compromise Oprah as much as I'm saying it to bring to light the fact that even Oprah, even someone as enlightened and successful and who has a great intuition, it seems, can be misled, just like the rest of us. So if Oprah, being herself, having all of the influence in the world, can be misled, how much weight should we be giving to her endorsements of people like Gabby Bernstein, Gary Zukav, Debbie Ford? It's just a question, and I really want this to open up a discussion that I would love to continue having in the comments. And these gurus that are endorsed and have the stamp of approval by Oprah then go out to have their own influence because Oprah said. But my question is, how much weight should we be giving to them? How much trust should we be putting in them? And what is their responsibility in the way that they shape the world's view of spirituality and self-help? Because let's just take a second and really think about it. We only know what we see, what we hear. We're not privy to everything that goes on behind closed doors. And neither is Oprah, right? And so that is how this miscommunication, this endorsement of people who maybe shouldn't be being endorsed, and if they are, maybe everything that they say shouldn't be taken as if it's the Bible, which is kind of what happens when Oprah brings someone in. But because it's Oprah and the influence that she has, it becomes even more dangerous, because when she gives someone that stamp of approval, what happens is, because someone that we trust, who is that influential, that powerful figure, we let our guard down. When these people that she's given their stamp of approval says something and our spidey senses tingle and something doesn't seem right, we shut it down because they're the experts. We don't listen to ourselves because we think that they know better. And I suggest and I believe that if we don't think that we know enough, then we need to learn more, because we can't trust these people to have our best interest at heart. But what we can trust is that they'll have their own best interest at heart. And I'm not saying that I think that people are suggesting we do things against our own best interest on purpose, but I don't think that it matters. I think that good people can suggest that we do bad things from their perspective for good reasons. But your good intentions aren't enough for me. Now, is not just trusting what the guru or the expert or the whoever says more work? Absolutely. Is it worth it? I don't know. Just ask the investors who lost millions in Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme, including people like Kevin Bacon, including a millionaire woman who ended up having to clean houses because she lost everything, a man who committed suicide because he lost all of his money investing in Bernie Madoff. Why? Because so many other people had. So he did too. Trust the experts. Just ask the festival goers who were promised an exclusive event on a private island and ended up fighting over relief tents and stale cheese sandwiches. But they did it. Why? Because they had pretty models. They had Bella Hadid. They had Hailey Bieber, right? Dancing around. Oh, this is going to be a great time. They trusted the influencers. I'm just saying that all of this information that's coming in needs to be going through a filter and not just being accepted for face value. I have my filter, a set of criteria and standards that I use to go through information that comes in. And I'm not saying that it's perfect, but I am saying that I have it. And you should have one too, and that's the best we can do. I'm not saying that because I have a filter, I can never be taken advantage of or be suggested to do something and take it at face value and do it and it lead me down a wrong path. But I'm saying at least I have a filter. It's better than nothing. And you should develop a filter too, and pray to God it works. Especially if you are on the self-help, the self-betterment, the personal development, the spiritual development side of things. If that's something that interests you, even more so, it's important to have your wits about you, to not give up the mind that God gave you and put it into the hands of someone else to decide what is good and what is bad and what you should and shouldn't be doing. It's not up to them to decide. You really have to have your thinking cap on in this area. And I know I asked, what is the responsibility of the spiritual gurus who have Oprah's stamp of approval? You can let me know in the comments what you think. I'll tell you what I do. And it's okay if we disagree. I love disagreement. I think that it shows the beauty of how we're all different. I think it's cool. We should disagree about some things. My personal belief is that the responsibility doesn't completely lie with them. And when it comes to me, it doesn't lie with them at all. The responsibility is on me to use the God-given brain that he gave me, to use my ability to look at situations, to look at suggestions, to read books, and ultimately say, no, that's not going to work for me. Ultimately, I would say that the responsibility lies with us, not any spiritual guru and not Oprah. It's up to us to not lay our critical thinking down on the altar of any spiritual guru, pastor, Oprah, celebrity, influencer, or anyone else. It's important that we're diligent in seeking out the sources of the information that these people are putting out to us. So with that being said, we're going to dive in. I'm going to give you one example of something that I read in a book, and I want you to tell me, do you think it's truth or danger? I'm going to give you another small example, but ultimately I'm going to lead into something that you need to look out for in yourself, especially when the gurus are suggesting that it's something, but you can tell me if you think it's truth or danger. And then lastly, I'm going to give you a technique that I think that they use to push out ideas that, depending on who you are, could be harmful. I'm going to ask you a question that's a little bit off the wall, but I want to know, what would you do if I told you, if I suggested to you? Now, I'm a coach, I'm an NLP trainer, I have a 6-figure business, everything's great, right? What would you do if I suggested to you that you look in the mirror and tell yourself you're evil till it no longer bothered you? What would you say? Let me know in the comments if I made that suggestion to you, what would you say? And we'll circle back. We're going to circle back to this. And maybe it's because you subconsciously or consciously know about the power of an I am statement. Maybe it's because you're aware that these are the words that shape your identity. And so you'd say, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. Maybe, I don't know. I think that one of the things that bothers me so much is that a lot of us come to these books when we're ready to level up. We're ready to take our lives to the next level. And so we look to these books and these authors and different figures. And so for them to make some of the suggestions that they do, I won't say that it's intentional, but regardless, I think that the outcome is completely reckless. If you don't mind, for 1 second, I want to digress into the power of I am statements. I'm an NLP trainer. I'm developing my own certification. I have courses on personal development and things. I've been into this world for a while now. And one of the coolest things that I've ever learned was the neurological levels by a man named Robert Dilts. And basically, this is a model for change and how it occurs. There's 6 different levels. And how it works is, if you make a change at one of the higher levels, it has a trickle-down effect into all the other levels. So starting from the bottom, there's environment. You can change your environment if you want to change things. You can change your behavior if you want to change things. You can change your skills and capability if you want to change things. You can change your beliefs and values if you want to change things. You can change your identity if you want to change things, or spirituality, okay? So if you go, behavior, it's going to have a trickle-down effect. If you start at the level of skills and capabilities, that's going to have a trickle-down effect in the change that you're able to create. But if you go with the 2 highest levels, that'll make the most powerful change in your life. Identity is one of the biggest changes. So those I am statements, those I am and I am not statements. So when I read in this book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford, that's directly endorsed by Deepak Chopra, who's endorsed by Oprah. She's endorsed by Oprah. And she says some of the most horrifying things that I've read in a book. Allow me to read a portion of this book to you really quick. This book has 4.6 out of 5 stars. I find that horrifying. I find this book horrifying. I think it's terrible, and I was actively irritated by the time I got to the end of it. My husband was like, and my mom, because I ranted to them about it. They were just like, why are you reading it? And I'm like, because other people who are seeking to better themselves are reading this and probably taking her suggestions to heart because Oprah said she's cool. This is the danger of an endorsement from someone like Oprah. Even if she means well, you meaning well isn't enough for me. When you're making suggestions that people will take to heart and do things like say, I am evil in the mirror till they no longer are bothered by it. To me, that's horrific for the reason that we just talked about with the 6 levels of change. And identity being the highest one and the trickle-down effect that can have. To have someone do an exercise like that is ridiculous to me. It's horrifying. And I can't believe that anybody would ever say that. And I guess that goes to show what's so amazing about the things that people will say under the guise of good intentions. I don't care about your good intentions. I promise you I don't. So right now I'm going to read you a little excerpt out of The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. On the side, I actually have written LOL WTF because by this point I was just like, oh, this is crazy. And what I'm about to read to you isn't even the worst thing in this book. Aside from some of the comments this woman makes earlier in the book, she says something that is the reason that I forgot that I actually stopped reading this book the first time around, because I was just like, this is stupid. This is a horrific exercise or thing to do. And I don't know why you would ever think it unless you were being influenced by something really evil. That's the conclusion I came to. Okay, so reading on page 86. One of my close friends, Jennifer, was convinced she was being stalked. Jennifer would see the same woman at all public events she attended. She was sure the woman was following her. "She's evil," Jennifer would tell me. Of course, being the good friend that I am, I told Jennifer, "You are evil." She'd get furious with me and hang up the phone screaming, "I am not evil." Understandably so, I think that is the normal response to such a statement. I digress. For nearly a year, this woman kept showing up everywhere Jennifer went. Toward the end of the year, Jennifer flew to Hawaii for a conference. She'd been looking forward to the meeting for months. Sure enough, the woman showed up at the lecture. Jennifer was horrified. She called me from Hawaii. What do I have to do to get rid of this woman? Now, I just want to offer this. Be careful who you ask for advice from, especially if they're going to make suggestions like this. I asked her, "What judgments do you have about being evil?" Jennifer told me, of course, it was awful to be evil, and evil people did bad things. We tried to think of times in her life she'd been evil, and she came up with a few incidents when she'd done mean things to her little sister that could be considered evil. Now, I also want to bring up something else that happens. When we hear these statements, or people who are in positions who seem enlightened or in positions of power or seem like they know more than us, we'll take their suggestions and we'll say, okay, I need to make this work, because they're making it seem like making this concept work is the answer to our problem. So we take it on board and we're like, okay, how have I been evil in the past? I was mean to my little sister. Now, do you get how that's a stretch? How you're trying to stretch reality and bend it to make it fit this exercise that this woman's telling you you need to do? I'm just going to say this right now. If I have to bend my mind into a pretzel to make what you're saying make sense, maybe it's nonsensical. Back to the book. She had felt deeply shameful of those moments and decided to be a good person. In her mind, good people were not evil. I think that's in everybody's mind. I explained that we would not know good without evil, just as we couldn't know love without hate. If we can own the evil or the hate in ourselves, we wouldn't need to project it onto other people. Obviously, there's a difference between being able to observe good and evil and love and hate, and taking those things as internal qualities of being evil and hateful. This is the belief system. If we can own the evil or the hate in ourselves, we wouldn't need to project it onto other people. I told Jennifer to try standing in front of the bathroom mirror and saying to herself, "I am evil," until she no longer cared about denying that aspect of herself. After an hour in front of the mirror, Jennifer was so angry she sat down and wrote a letter to the woman she believed was stalking her. Jennifer allowed herself to call this woman all the nasty names she could think of to express all of her rage. This woman also has a history of calling people in her mind nasty things for existing, apparently, but she's beyond that now. She was radically honest, and as a result, she felt lighter and better. Jennifer had needed to give a voice to her pain and anger. After writing the letter, she tore it to shreds, went back to the mirror, and owned her evil. She never saw the woman again. This is freedom. Be careful about the people you accept advice from, because you never know what their worldview is, and they might have you standing in front of the mirror saying, "I'm evil," till it no longer bothers you. But I want to ask, do you think that's more truth or danger? If we were friends talking on the phone on the way home from work and I said, "You're evil," as you're telling me about this horrific person, this evil woman who's stalking you, and my response was, "You are evil," how would you respond to that? Is in general, I don't believe that the context of the book matters. I don't believe that all of the setup that she did to get to a point where she would say something like that matters. I don't believe that there is ever a context where someone should stand in the mirror saying that I am negative things, which she does advise in the exercise. She gives you list off a whole list of negative words that you should say, and anyone that triggers you, you should just keep saying it until it no longer bothers you in the mirror to yourself. I don't think that that is a good exercise for anyone to do, for all the obvious reasons, for the power of I am statements, because of the fact that words are not just words. They are not just sounds and symbols and a means of communication, but they actually shape our experience in life, our emotions, our beliefs, the world around us. And so with that, I believe that that is dangerous, but I'm curious to know what you think, and if you think differently, let me know in the chat. Reasonable minds can differ, so I'm open to some dialogue. That's just one example. I mean, I've read 5 books so far this month. I've got 3 more left to go, but with that, I've seen a lot of things. I'm just picking out like one example, and that's not even the worst example from that book, but I've seen it multiple times over multiple books, these sorts of practices. But let's go into another example, and you can tell me if you think that the first one was worse or the second one was worse, or if neither one of them are bad at all. It's up to you. I don't want my opinions to influence yours. I'm just giving mine because I feel like it's the right thing to do. Now, let me move on to point 2, and I want to talk to you about something that these spiritual gurus and guides can advise or inadvertently influence people to have. So there's this place in Japan called Okinawa. It's a small island. My secret boyfriend at the time actually was stationed there, but we're married now. It's fine. He was stationed in Japan, and I remember him telling me that it was haunted. And I remember him telling me and sending me YouTube videos. And you can literally look up YouTube videos and you'll see like ghosts and things moving. He'd leave to go to the bathroom and he'd come back and the door would be locked. Or he'd be the only person working the night shift and everything would be strewn about, like papers on the floors, things like that. And I remember him telling me this and I'm like, this is crazy. But everyone in Okinawa knows that the spiritual realm and spirits are real. So there's a house. And in that house, everyone who moved in, they'd hear a voice that was telling them to kill their family, and they would do it. And now, of course, the house is torn down and no one's allowed to like build there or live there. Now, why am I saying that about Okinawa? Because I think that it's important to realize that the spiritual realm is real, spirits are real, and they are not always advising people to do things that are in the best interest of themselves or the people around them. So let's just pose a question. If someone were to tell you to jot down the names of spirits that you wanted to communicate with, archangels, people who have passed away, guides, as they like to call them, would you do it without really understanding who they are or how it's happening or how it works? And I think that this is an important question to ask because that's exactly what some of these spiritual people are suggesting that people do in these books. Is that more truth or danger? If you think it's danger, do you think that it's more danger than the last exercise of saying, I am evil? To dabble in an invisible world and call on spirits you can't see and just trust that you're only calling on good spirits because that's your intention, when we know that even our good intentions won't cause the people that are humans that we can see to behave in the way we expect them to. We can't even control how our kids or our coworkers or our family members respond to us, but we think that we're going to be able to control these invisible entities. And that brings me to the attitude that we can start to have, and we have it based on, the endorsement of Oprah, who endorses Gabby Bernstein, who then influences us and endorses us to have this spiritual arrogance. In this book, Super Attractor, with its beautiful cover, Gabby Bernstein, a very nice title. It's about manifesting. That seems lovely enough. In this book, she actually suggests, it says, choose the guide you want to connect with now. Open your journal and write down the first name that comes to mind. It doesn't matter whether it's an archangel, a deceased family member, your higher self, or any other spiritual guide. Don't overthink. Just write down the type of guidance you're inspired to connect to. She then provides an exercise to connect to this guide. Now, I ask you again, is this more truth or danger? You tell me what you think. Now, I am presenting this in a certain context, and she presents it in hers. But for some things, context doesn't matter. I'm going to circle back to my point. This brings us to spiritual arrogance, the idea that we as humans have the ability, by writing down on a piece of paper a name, can conjure or command spirits to do our bidding. And I'll take it one step further. Say you do decide to do this and you do write down the name. How do you know you're contacting the right spirit? How do you know it's not just a spirit playing with you or toying with you or pretending to be the one that you think it is? And you're just inviting these sorts of scenarios and spirits into your world. And I'm just asking if that's a wise thing to do. Do you think it's more truth or danger? Are you willing to invite these sorts of encounters into your life because a book told you to and made it seem like the spiritual realm is just a euphoric utopia ran by a benevolent, all-loving universe? Because I'll tell you this, people in Okinawa, people who have had different experiences, they know that that's not the case. And I don't know if spiritual arrogance, if the assumption that by writing down on a piece of paper we can control the spiritual realm, I don't know if it's more arrogant or if it's more ignorant to assume that all spirits are good spirits with our best intentions at heart. I don't know which one it is, but to me, all I know is I think that it's dangerous. And that if you're going to dabble in the spiritual world, you should at least know that it's not all pretty ladies and manifestation and like lovey-dovey, write down a name on a piece of paper. I think that you should do it full well knowing the can of worms, the Pandora's box that you're potentially opening. So I've given you a few examples so far of things that I think are dangerous about spiritual books. These are just 2 examples. Trust me, guys, I have pages and pages of notes. I've read 5 books this month. I have notes in depth on all of them. But I'm just giving you 2 examples, and I want to talk to you about something else that I see, right? Because I just presented you with things that I think are obviously dangerous, but they don't just start with the things that are obviously dangerous. So I want to talk to you about one thing that you can look out for that can help your filter if you decide to use it. What I want to talk to you about is what I call the gateway technique. In 2018, there was a documentary put on Netflix that I think describes this technique that these books, these spiritual books, all use very, very well. And in the documentary, it's called The Push, and a mentalist and illusionist named Darren Brown is doing a social experiment to see if he can get an ordinary person to commit an unthinkable act. And he starts by getting them to tell one little lie, and then another little lie, and then another, and then another. And it kind of just snowballs into this situation where he wants to see if he can get a regular everyday person to push someone off the side of a building. And it's the idea that these little micro commitments that they get you to nod your head to say okay to agree to, can lead to bigger, worse things, because the commitment to the micro commitments has you further down a path that you didn't know you were going down. And I think that that describes the gateway technique to a T. Because these books, where's the other one? I threw it too far. But this book, the other book by Debbie Ford, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, they don't open the book saying write down the names of a spirit you want to connect to, because they know people would run, from my point of view. They don't start off saying tell yourself you're evil in the mirror, because they know you'll run. They wait till they've said some things that add up. They've made you feel good. Now you're down this path, and they're suggesting that you do these things. And instead of allowing your spidey senses to say absolutely not, you nod your head because you're already down the path. And I think that is how people get roped into doing things that they shouldn't be doing. They already have their guard down because the authors do. I'm not saying that this book doesn't have anything of value. I'm saying that where the value leads you is not an end that I think most people want to end up at. And that is the gateway technique. You start with these small little things that are easy to digest, and then you slip in what you really think people should be doing, how you really feel about it, and now you're further down a path doing things and behaving in ways you never imagined you would. And I just feel like it's my job. It's the only thing that I know that I can do as I'm reading this, besides getting mad. Getting mad for what? That's not an outcome. That's a reaction. That's not a response. So my response is to say that I think that the practices, some of the practices that they say, I could do a whole podcast on it. I could do a podcast on each of these books, to be honest. But the practices are problematic, but it's masked under pretty faces with cute covers and pink and manifestation. Well, I can tell you this. I've manifested a lot of things in my life, and I didn't do it by talking to spirits or telling myself I'm evil in the mirror. It's not necessary. You don't need it. I want to tell you a story about a time where a suggestion made by one of these spiritual gurus, who was endorsed by Oprah, impacted me. So I was a cheerleader for pregnancy. Anytime one of my friends got pregnant, I was like the biggest advocate. It's going to be great. You're going to do amazing. This was before I was ever pregnant or have my daughter. But I was just a big advocate because I had been so fearful about pregnancy. I was like, I must just not understand it. I need to learn more about it. Not that that goes for everything, but I was like, I clearly don't understand. Like, everybody's done this. That's how everybody's here. So I wanted to understand it. So I listened to over 100 hours, I'm sure, of birth podcasts and things about birth. And I was like an advocate. I was like, this is cool. I was gung-ho. So everybody who talked to me, I was encouraging. One of my friends actually invited me, and I took videos of her birth, and it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. Like, I'm telling you, it's just mind-blowing. It's not like the movies make it, and I was gung-ho for this. Anyway, fast forward, I get pregnant. I'm going through it. I'm like, this is amazing. Everything was cool. Everything was good. I go into labor. Everything's fine and good. I'm breathing through my contractions. Me and my husband are like in the zone, and everything's going really, really great. And so I ended up at the hospital, and everything's still going fine. Everything's going fine. Everything's going fine until it's not. Because what happened was I was prepared for everything to happen. I was prepared for the worst to happen, as some people put it, but this thing that happened to me, I didn't know existed. They say that what happened actually is like eradicated in the United States and only happens in third world countries. And at the end of my birth, after all of my positivity and after all of my encouragement for other people, I felt broken. I didn't feel like a woman. It was horrible. And I remember riding in the car because I still wanted to be present, and I didn't want to miss out on moments with my daughter, being down. And so I was riding in the car one day. I had gone to the store, and I was listening to Oprah's Super Soul Conversations with Eckhart Tolle. And he said to accept each moment as if you've chosen it because you have.
Accept this moment as if you had chosen it.
And even if you haven't, and it's hard for you to accept that, to just accept it because you have chosen it. It's a concept that is mirrored in this book, one of these books, that I read in July. And actually a lot of things. Personal development will say some variation of this. Spiritual people will say some variation of this. In personal development spaces, it's more like you need to be at cause for the results you're getting in life. I was at one of my trainings, and that was one of the things that they were saying. And I always struggled with it because I knew for a fact I had not chosen for my birth to end in the way that it did. So I always had that question. And in these trainings, other girls who had had things happen to them would say, well, I didn't choose that. And they would not be willing to acknowledge that, no, you chose everything. Now, the way that this book justifies it is, it's called The Seed of the Soul. And in his book, he makes the argument or the metaphor or whatever you want to call it. It's not substantiated by anything that I can see, that your soul reincarnates and it actually made a contract in a previous life. And so that is why, you know, these bad things do happen, because your soul made an agreement and now it's in your body. So you have to, you know, take on the effects. So that's the argument here. I'm just going to say it like it is, because essentially that's what he's saying. And to me, of course, that's absurd, but also based on what? Based on what? Like, you're saying all of this, but based on what is my question. And I honestly think that what it is it's an attempt to be all-knowing, to be able to explain everything, to know everything, and really be enlightened. Because as humans, I guess it's a little bit difficult to just say, I don't know. We want to like play God and decide that we know how this whole thing works together. And so then you get to things like, oh, the reason that the kid has cancer is because the soul in the kid was actually in someone else and they had a contract, and so now the kid has cancer. When in reality, and it's not unfair. So it's okay to be empathetic, but it's not okay to say that it's unfair, which is what this book says, because it's not unfair. Their soul made a contract. And if you got into a car accident, some drunk driver rear-ended you, it's your fault, because now the way that the personal development people will try to make this seem is it's your fault. You're at cause for that because you decided to turn down that street. The spiritual people will say your soul made a contract. Either way, it is a whole bunch of word salad jibber jabber that lacks any kind of sense. And I'm not saying that everything needs to make sense, but I'm saying don't offer me suggestions that don't. Based on nothing. If you're going to base it on something, okay, then I'm more, but it's just jibber jabber. And here's how I know. I'll leave you with this. I was talking to one of the trainers because she had presented this, and a lot of people had objections to it. And I just want to say, listen to your objections. Listen to people, but listen to yourself too. Take it, run it through a filter, think about it. Apply logic. If you have to twist your brain into a pretzel, if you have to leave your brain at the door, exit stage left. That's what I choose to do. But I remember this teacher coming to me and saying, well, after I asked her a question, I was like, this isn't really adding up. She's like, well, it's just something that if people accept that they're at cause for everything, it makes it easier for them to accept that they're at cause for the little things. I don't care about easier. I care about accuracy. I think that this is where a lot of people go wrong, wanting to take a concept and stretch it beyond the point. Because of course, extreme ownership is a good thing, but accepting responsibility for something that's clearly not your fault, that you didn't cause, when someone used their free will and enacted it against you and saying, oh, I caused that, is not good and it's not healthy. And I don't care about soul contracts or being at cause or it being easier to be at cause for little things if you can accept responsibility for big things. Accept responsibility for the things that you're responsible for, period. This is something that happens. It's like people want to take ideas and concepts and stretch them beyond where they're meant to go because it makes things easier. Because it makes them more enlightened. But it's not true. It's based on nothing. It's air. Word salad jibber jabber. That's what I'm going to start calling this stuff, because that's what it is. So ultimately, I hope that this video has enlightened you some. I hope that you do, keep your wits about you when you're reading these books, when you're on these journeys. I hope that this video helps you. I hope I wasn't too intense. I am very passionate about this because I know what it's like to want more and to be doing everything and trying things. And I'm just saying there are some things you shouldn't try. That's all I've got for today. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think that these things are more truth or danger? Or any other thoughts that you have? If you like this video, give it a like. If you know someone that this particular video would help, please share. If you dig the vibes, you can subscribe. That's all I've got for today. Peace out.